The snow had been falling for 3 days straight, soft but endless, covering the old road like a blanket that no one would ever lift again. Through that silence came a single sound, the slow, steady crunch of footsteps. An old man and woman walked side by side, their coats too thin for the bitter cold. They didn't speak, but their faces told enough. They had nowhere else to go. When they reached the gates, even the wind seemed to pause. The iron was rusted, the hinges buried under frost, and behind it stood a mansion, dark, enormous, and almost forgotten by time. Its windows were blind with ice, its walls cracked and grey. It looked like a place that hadn't felt a heartbeat in years. The woman hesitated, her breath forming clouds in the air. "It's colder here," she whispered. The man didn't answer. He just pushed the gate open. It creaked loudly, a sound that cut through the quiet like a warning. They didn't belong here, not anymore. Once, they had a home full of light and laughter. Once, their children had promised to take care of them. But promises melt faster than snow when hearts turn cold. The house they were thrown out of was warm, filled with new furniture and young voices that no longer called them Mom and Dad. So now, they stood before this place, a frozen ruin, bought for almost nothing, because no one else wanted it. "We can fix it," the old man said softly, more to himself than her. His wife looked at him, her eyes tired but kind. "It's just walls and dust," she murmured. But as they stepped inside, something strange happened. The air shifted, not warmer, but alive. A faint light flickered from somewhere deep in the hall, like the house itself had been waiting. The smell of old wood and ashes filled the air. The woman stopped, her fingers brushing the wall. "Do you feel that?" she asked quietly. The man nodded slowly. "It remembers." Outside, the snow fell harder, sealing the world in white. Inside, for the first time in years, they were not alone. The cold bit through their gloves as they pushed the heavy doors open, and the echo that followed was long and hollow, like the house was breathing for the first time in years. Dust swirled in the air, caught in the faint light that spilled through the cracked windows. The man stepped forward first, his boots sinking into a layer of untouched frost on the marble floor. Every surface was coated in ice, every corner frozen stiff, yet beneath all that decay, there was something still beautiful. The woman followed slowly, her fingers tracing the edge of a broken picture frame on the wall. Inside it, barely visible through the frost, was a photograph of a family, smiling faces from another century. She paused, studying it. "They were happy here once," she said softly. Her husband didn't reply. He was looking up at the grand staircase, its railings draped with cobwebs, the steps sagging under the weight of time. "So will we," he finally whispered. They didn't have much, just a few bags, a box of tools, and the will to survive the winter. The electricity was gone, the pipes frozen solid, and the fireplace hadn't seen flame in decades. Still, the old man set his lantern down on the dusty floor and got to work. He pried open broken shutters to let in light. He dragged old boards from the shed outside to fix the door. His wife found old curtains, stiff and grey, and shook the dust from them until they looked almost new. The hours passed quietly, the sound of their work echoing through the halls. By nightfall, the first fire flickered to life in the hearth. It wasn't much, just a handful of dry twigs and wood scraps, but its glow was enough to chase the shadows from the room. The woman sat beside it, rubbing her hands together. The warmth stung at first, almost painful after so long in the cold. "It feels strange," she said. "Like the house doesn't know what warmth is anymore." Her husband smiled faintly, his face glowing orange in the firelight. "Then we'll remind it." As the flames grew, the sound of the wind outside softened, like the storm was listening. The man leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes for a moment. His thoughts wandered, to their old home, to the laughter that used to fill it, and to the silence that came after. He remembered the day their children told them it was time to move out, their words sharp but polite, dressed in false kindness. "We just think you'll be more comfortable somewhere smaller." The look in their eyes had already said it. They'd stopped seeing him as their father. He was just an old man taking up space. The woman watched him quietly from across the room. She didn't need to ask what he was thinking. She'd thought it too, every night since they left. But here, in this forgotten house, there was something different. It didn't judge them. It didn't push them away. It simply stood silent and still, offering shelter without question. Later that night, as the fire dimmed to embers, she wandered through the hallways with a candle. The house creaked softly, settling around her like an old body stretching after sleep. In the corner of what must have been a library, she found an old piano. Its keys were yellowed, the surface cracked, but when she pressed one gently, it made a sound, faint and uneven, but alive. She smiled. "It still sings," she whispered. She lit another candle and placed it on top of the piano, watching the light dance across the old wood. For the first time in years, she felt something warm bloom in her chest, a quiet peace, fragile but real. Upstairs, her husband had found a small bedroom with faded wallpaper and a broken window. He patched it as best he could, then spread their blankets on the floor. When she joined him, he looked at her, tired but content. "It's not much," he said. She looked around the room, at the flicker of the candlelight, the soft whisper of wind outside, and the faint hum of the piano still echoing below. "It's more than we had yesterday," she replied. They lay side by side, the sound of the storm fading into the distance. The fire downstairs kept burning, its glow reaching the corners of the house. For the first time in years, the old walls didn't feel empty. They felt alive, as if something deep within them was beginning to wake. And as the couple drifted into sleep, the frost on the windows began to melt, one delicate drop at a time, like tears falling from the glass. The days passed quietly after that, marked not by clocks or calendars, but by the rhythm of the fire and the slow melting of the frost. Each morning, the man would rise before dawn, his breath white in the cold air, and begin repairing what time had broken. Each evening, his wife would light the lanterns one by one, filling the mansion with small pockets of gold that chased away the grey. The house was beginning to change, and so were they. The first thing they noticed was the warmth. It wasn't just from the fires they built or the heavy curtains they found to block the drafts. It was deeper, quieter, almost alive. The air inside no longer bit at their skin. The floors didn't groan so harshly under their steps. The house, it seemed, was responding to them. One afternoon, as the man worked to fix the roof above the entryway, he found something strange beneath a cracked beam, a locket, small and rusted, with a tiny photo inside. The image was faded, but the outlines of a young couple were clear enough. They were standing in front of the same mansion, smiling, their hands linked the same way he and his wife held theirs now. He brought it to her that evening. She opened it, squinting at the faces, then smiled faintly. "They looked happy," she said. "Maybe we can be, too." The nights grew softer after that. The snow still fell outside, but inside, the glow of the fire filled the rooms with life. The woman began to hum as she cleaned, and sometimes, the man caught himself smiling for no reason. The house was becoming a home again, one slow repair, one gentle moment at a time. But not everything felt simple. Sometimes, in the late hours, when the wind pressed against the windows and the flames flickered low, they would hear things. Soft footsteps in the hallway above. The faint sound of laughter, distant, like from another room. The first night it happened, the woman froze, her eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. He listened, the air between them holding its breath. There it was again, a quiet giggle, then silence. "Probably the house," he said, trying to sound calm. "Old wood moves when it's warm again." But as the days went on, the sounds continued. Sometimes faint whispers drifted through the halls, words too soft to understand. Other times, the door to the old piano room would creak open on its own. They never saw anyone, and nothing ever moved out of place, but the feeling was always the same, as if the mansion wasn't empty. As if someone, or something, was watching their progress with quiet curiosity. Instead of fear, though, there was a strange comfort in it. The woman began leaving candles burning in the empty rooms, whispering a soft good night before she blew them out. The man, too, started to talk to the house, thanking it when a door finally stayed shut or a leak stopped dripping. It became a habit, an unspoken ritual, like the house was listening. One morning, while clearing the last of the broken glass from a window, he noticed something he hadn't before, a mark carved into the wooden frame. It was faint, worn by age, but still legible. The same initials engraved on the locket. He smiled quietly. "You're still here," he murmured. That night, as they sat by the fire, his wife leaned against him and asked softly, "Do you think they can see us? The ones who lived here before?" He thought for a long moment before answering. "Maybe they can. Maybe they're happy we came." Outside, the storm had ended. The moonlight stretched through the bare trees and spilled across the windows. Inside, the walls no longer looked grey, but soft and golden in the glow of the fire. The house felt alive, not haunted, but grateful. Later, when the woman went upstairs to fetch another blanket, she paused at the top of the staircase. The faint sound of music drifted through the hall. The piano again. Slow, steady notes, played with care. She smiled, her eyes soft. "Thank you," she whispered into the silence. And for a moment, just a moment, she thought she heard a voice answer, quiet and warm, "You're welcome." She said nothing when she returned to her husband. She simply sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder as the flames danced. The snow outside kept falling, but the house no longer felt cold. It was breathing again, each sound and flicker of light carrying the same quiet truth. Sometimes, even what's been forgotten can be brought back to life. The winter deepened, but inside those walls, the chill no longer ruled them. Every day, the couple found another small miracle. Beneath layers of grime, the wooden floors gleamed again. The chandeliers, once dark with dust, caught the firelight and scattered it like tiny stars. The woman would often stop in the middle of her work, her hand pressed against her heart, just to listen. The house had a heartbeat now, soft, steady, and familiar. But sometimes, it beat in ways that didn't belong to them. It started one evening while the old man was mending a broken shutter. The snow outside had turned into rain, tapping gently against the windows. His wife was humming in the next room, that same tune she'd taken to singing lately, slow, warm, comforting. Then, without warning, he heard it again. The piano. Those same soft, deliberate notes drifting through the air. He smiled faintly at first, thinking she had gone to play again. "You sound lovely," he called out. No answer. The melody continued, perfectly calm, echoing through the halls. He walked toward the sound, the floor creaking beneath his boots. When he reached the piano room, the firelight from the main hall spilled through the doorway. The piano sat there, still and silent. The bench was empty. But the keys were moving, slow, steady, pressing down one by one as if guided by invisible hands. His breath caught. He stepped back once, twice. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the music stopped. The house fell quiet again, except for the faint crackle of firewood. He waited for the fear to rise, but it didn't. Instead, he felt something else, the same warmth that had been growing since they arrived. A strange sense of peace. Like the house was simply speaking to him. When he told his wife later, she didn't look frightened either. "Maybe it remembers being alive," she said. "Maybe it just needed us to remind it how." The next day, he found her in the garden, or what had once been one. The snow had melted enough to reveal patches of earth beneath, dark and rich. She was kneeling in the dirt, planting seeds she'd found in an old tin box in the pantry. "They were here before," she said softly, smiling up at him. "They'll come back." He watched her hands move through the soil, gentle but certain. Her breath turned to steam in the cold air, but her cheeks glowed pink with warmth. For the first time, she looked alive again. The sight filled him with something he hadn't felt in years, hope. Over the next few weeks, the mansion changed faster than either of them expected. The broken windows were mended, the room scrubbed clean. The woman began baking again, the smell of bread and cinnamon drifting through the halls like old memories. The man restored the front gate and fixed the bell by the door, though no visitors ever came. The house, once frozen and forgotten, was now filled with light and the sound of living. But as the house grew warmer, strange things began to happen more often. Sometimes, they would wake in the night to the faint sound of footsteps above them, steady and slow, pacing from one end of the hallway to the other. Other times, a candle would flicker back to life long after being blown out. Once, the woman swore she heard laughter, soft, like a child's, coming from the garden. Neither of them spoke much about it, but both felt it. The house wasn't empty. Yet neither could bring themselves to fear it. If anything, it felt as though the spirits, or memories, or whatever lingered there, had accepted them. Maybe even cared for them. One evening, as they sat by the fire, she looked up suddenly and said, "Do you ever think they were like us? The people who lived here before?" The man poked at the fire, the embers glowing brighter. Maybe they were. Maybe they lost everything too. Maybe they just wanted someone to see them again. Her eyes softened. "Then we did them a kindness." The fire crackled in answer, sparks leaping up the chimney. Outside, the wind howled, but inside, the warmth held steady. The old house, once a tomb of silence and ice, now pulsed with life, the kind that comes not from walls or bricks, but from the people who dare to care again. Later that night, when the couple went to bed, the man awoke to a faint sound, the front door opening. He rose quietly, his bare feet cold on the floor. The hallway was dim, the air still. He followed the sound to the foyer, where the moonlight streamed through the window. The door was open, just an inch, letting in a soft breath of snow. He closed it gently, latching it shut. But before turning away, he noticed something strange, faint footprints in the snow just beyond the threshold. Small ones, leading from the gate to the door. He stepped outside, the cold biting at his skin. The prints stopped at the door, no trail leading away. Just there, and gone. He stood in the quiet, staring into the night. The snow fell softly, covering the marks until they disappeared. When he went back inside, the piano played again. This time, only 3 notes. Slow, tender, like a good night. The morning came quietly, the kind of stillness that made even the air seem to hold its breath. The house was wrapped in fog, the world outside reduced to a blur of white. The man woke first, the sound of the old clock ticking faintly in the hallway. He sat up, his joints aching but his heart calm. For the first time in years, he hadn't dreamed of the past, not of the cold words from his children, not of the empty apartment they'd left behind. Only the house. The sound of laughter echoing through its halls. The warmth that now lived within its walls. He made his way downstairs, the wood creaking softly beneath his steps. The fireplace had gone out overnight, but the air still carried traces of warmth. He smiled faintly, almost proud, as if the house had learned to keep itself alive. In the kitchen, his wife was already awake, humming to herself as she stirred a pot on the stove. The smell of coffee mingled with bread baking in the oven, soft and sweet. He kissed her cheek, a small gesture, but enough to make her smile. "It's almost beautiful again," she said, glancing toward the window where sunlight tried to break through the mist. He nodded. "Almost," he murmured, though a strange heaviness sat in his chest. He didn't say it out loud, but the memory of the footprints still haunted him, small, delicate, stopping right at their door. He'd dreamed of them in flashes through the night, as though whoever they belonged to was still out there, waiting. The day went on as most did. They worked in quiet companionship. He repaired the last of the shutters while she cleaned the mirrors in the long hallway. Each time she wiped away the dust, the reflection seemed clearer, brighter, until she caught something that made her pause. In the mirror behind her, for just a heartbeat, she thought she saw movement. A figure standing at the top of the staircase. Small, still, watching. She turned quickly, her breath catching, but the steps were empty. The house was quiet again. She laughed nervously under her breath. "You're just tired," she whispered to herself. But when she turned back to the mirror, there was something written on the fogged glass. *thank you. Her hand froze. The words faded as quickly as they had appeared, leaving only her reflection, wide-eyed and trembling. She didn't tell her husband. Not yet. Some things, she thought, were better kept between her and the house. That evening, as the snow fell softly outside, they sat together in front of the fire. The room glowed gold and orange, the warmth wrapping around them like an old friend. The piano played again, a slow, gentle melody this time, almost like a lullaby. The man didn't rise to check. Neither did she. They simply listened, their fingers intertwined. The warmth grew so strong that it felt as if the house itself was breathing in rhythm with them. The cracks in the walls seemed to soften. The faded wallpaper looked richer in color. The chandeliers gleamed faintly, as if remembering their former glory. For the first time in years, everything felt right. Then came the knock. Soft, at first. 3 slow taps against the front door. The man frowned and stood, his heart thudding in his chest. It was late, too late for visitors. He approached the door cautiously, every step echoing through the quiet house. When he reached it, he hesitated. "Who's there?" he called out. No answer. Only silence, broken by the faint whistle of wind outside. He opened the door slowly. The cold rushed in at once, sharp and biting. The porch was empty. No footprints this time. Just snow falling gently onto the steps. He exhaled, half in relief, half in confusion. But then he looked down, and saw it. A small object sat on the doorstep. A locket. The same one he'd found weeks ago, now polished clean, the metal gleaming faintly in the moonlight. He picked it up carefully, turning it over in his hand. Inside was a new photograph. The same couple as before, But this time, they weren't alone. There were two new faces beside them. His and his wife's. He stood there for a long time, the snow clinging to his coat, the cold forgotten. Behind him, the piano played again, louder now, its melody full of warmth and something that felt like joy. He closed the door, locking it gently, and walked back to the fire. His wife looked up, her eyes questioning. He handed her the locket without a word. She opened it, her expression softening as she saw the picture. Tears welled in her eyes. "They know," she whispered. "They remember." The man nodded, his throat tight. "And they are with us," he said quietly. Outside, the fog began to lift. The storm that had haunted the house for decades seemed to fade with it, leaving behind a sky full of soft, scattered light. The garden, buried for years beneath the frost, shimmered faintly with green, the first signs of spring pushing through the snow. The woman smiled through her tears, her fingers still wrapped around the locket. "You see," she whispered, "even forgotten things can grow again." The piano continued to play, steady and warm, as the firelight flickered across the walls. The house, once frozen, once silent, was alive again. And for the first time in a long while, so were they.